This is Griffin Avid presenting 3D Planets Volume 1 for the Daz Store. It's a collection of planets mixed in with suns that become objects you can pull into your scene to create the backdrop or just an object you can interact with. You saw in my 2D planets, we had the actual finished render as a PNG. This is actually a 3D object that you can manipulate inside your Daz store, plus 3 suns and a special billboard object. Let's take a look at how these work together. What we have is a planet pulled from the library as a prop loaded into my scene. I have the planet, and behind it, we have the backdrops. Let's get rid of some of these. This is actually, as you can see, a plane which you can load different materials on. So I could load the stars or even start out with a nebulae just in case I wanted to use an HDRI for my lighting and actually keep the background. But for a billboard, we get a black outer space. We get a second layer, which is a material that could be a nebulae. I could grab any one of these colorful nebulae patterns to go on top. That'd be a second layer. As you can see, the layers, one layer back here, a second layer here, and there's a third layer, which is optional if you want to add a second layer of space dust and clouds and colorful type background. But those three work together to form 3 layers of graphics. And in front, I've got my planet. I would basically place my scene, choose my materials for these objects, and then begin a render. And I would have my planet and also my backdrops. And you'll see when we look at one of our promo arts, so we'll pull that up next. You'll pretty much see how we can layer these together and get something going. Let's take apart one of the promo images. This is one of the spaceships flying toward the planets. And we'll take a look. We'll go in reverse this time. We'll take a look at the artwork first and then go back and look at how we put it together. This would be our Daz render, raw right from the machine. Made a couple of copies. We added a flare to just give our engines a little bit of burst. We have a streak heading off the tail. Particles in the wake of my ship, a few more particles cleaner in the area. And then minor color adjustment, and our promo art is finished. And again, this uses our 3D Planets product. Let's take a look inside the Daz store at how this was put together. So we have that ship heading towards our 3 planets. If you look at the scene setup, it's pretty simple. It is a 3D model of a spaceship. Angled with my camera, I did the vertical layout. We can see that I have my 3 planets loaded. So we just load the 3 planets, and there we have them. And our backdrop is a 2-layer backdrop this time. We didn't need 3, so we used just 2 of the layers. And we have the main backdrop. Let's take a look. The main backdrop, which is just my point, stars, and light. And then we have, and then we have the background. Lighting for this one is done through an HDRI. That's a trick I show on many of my other products. If we take a look at the environment, I have dome and scene so that we're gonna get the lighting cast from whatever the background is onto our scene, and the background lighting is an HDRI. I turn the dome off because I don't need that lighting. It wouldn't have made a difference because my backdrop is gonna be blocking that. In many cases, I'll leave my own backdrop as the main, but you could also put it behind it. We take the ground off so that the camera doesn't get blocked by the ground in case I pick an extreme angle. We might find ourselves blocked by the ground, and we don't need that. And when I usually render, I'll do it without the dome on. I'll get a PNG which has all my elements isolated, and I add the backgrounds in later. But for this particular product, just as a bonus, we added that backdrop so you can put your own backdrop behind the artwork. But usually, that would be a separate product, but it's included in this as a bonus. So you get the planets and the backdrop together. Before we leave, let's take a look at some of the promo art. This is one of our sun props actually loaded behind the planet. The clouds and glare is post work, but we had an idea to have an image of the sun coming up over the horizon, a very large sun. That's how that one was done. This we'll explain in the next pic. Is the character was actually sitting in a window, which was a set, and we had the camera facing outside, and we had 2 of our props sitting outside the window, and the void of space backdrop was in the back with a bunch of layers. This is a relative size of the planets to a Daz figure, a default Daz figure. This is what you're basically getting, the size of one of the sun that gives off a heavy glow on the scene. This was the one that we looked at, the spaceship flying towards the planet. It was very nice. This one just shows the opacity of the rings, that you can see through the rings on the planet. This is a list of the planets, so you can see what the planet shapes are and the texture maps will be when you load them up. Very cool shot. You see the rings of the planet. We can see through the rings the detail of the planet. This was a reflection of my sun. This is just a very emotive picture. The astronaut looks out and sees the eclipse happening in his visor. This was a nice shot. And this was one of the times that we did choose to use the HDRI background for the scene. This is one of our artificial stars sunk below the horizon line, causing reflection on the water. One of our planet props, so you can see how powerful the sun is, that actually does cause a glow onto here. This is an artificial flare added that also gave the trace capture in the lights. And that would be it. It's 3D Planets Volume 1, available in the Daz Store. I'm Griffin Avid. Thank you for your support. Happy rendering.